I wish I never got adopted. I'm staring at the bank statement in my hands, and the number $847,329.67 keeps blurring through my tears. That's what should be in my inheritance account right now. Instead, the current balance shows $23,891.04. My name is Riley Chin Morrison, though I'm thinking of dropping that hyphenated surname real fucking quick. 18 years old as of last Tuesday, which means I finally have legal access to the accounts my biological parents set up before they died in that car crash when I was 7. 10 years I've been with the Morrison family. 10 years of thinking I hit the jackpot when they plucked me out of foster care, this beautiful family in their 6-bedroom house in Westfield with their Range Rovers and their golden retriever named Duchess. Margaret Morrison had tears in her eyes when she first met me at the agency. "Oh, Richard," she'd whispered to her husband, "she looks just like Emma would have if she'd lived." Emma was their daughter who died of leukemia at age 6, 2 years before they adopted me. I thought I was healing their broken hearts. Turns out I was just filling their empty bank account. The documents are spread across my desk like evidence at a crime scene. Bank statements, legal filings, account transfers. I found them yesterday when Margaret sent me to grab tax papers from Richard's home office. The manila folder was mislabeled as Property Tax 2019, but contained everything I needed to know about why the Morrisons really wanted me. Apparently, when my parents died, they left me a substantial inheritance, money from my father's life insurance policy and my mother's family trust. The adoption agency had explained that the funds would be held until I turned 18, but what they didn't explain was that adoptive parents could gain access to portions of it for approved educational and medical expenses. Richard Morrison, attorney at law, knew exactly how to work that system. Private school tuition for their bio kids Mason and Sophia. Charge to Riley's education fund. Family vacation to Europe. Medical wellness trip, doctor recommended for family bonding with adopted child. New pool in the backyard. Therapeutic recreation for Riley's trauma recovery. $800,000, nickel and dined away over 10 years while I wore hand-me-downs from Sophia and got a Target gift card for Christmas. I should have seen it sooner. The way they'd light up when teachers mentioned my academic achievements, not because they were proud, but because it justified the gifted program fees they were billing to my account. How they'd rush me to every medical appointment, not out of concern, but because each visit meant more billable expenses. Mason got a BMW for his 16th birthday. Sophia got a sweet 16 party that cost more than most people's weddings. I got a used Honda Civic and was told to be grateful. The really sick part. I was grateful. I spent 10 years grateful to these people who were literally stealing from me while I slept under their roof. Grateful for the scraps while they fed their real children prime rib. My phone buzzes with a text from Margaret, dinner in 20 minutes. Hope you found those tax papers. I look at the evidence scattered in front of me, then at my laptop screen where I've been researching attorneys who specialize in adoption fraud. Found a good one named Jessica Santos who offers free consultations for financial exploitation cases. 20 minutes until I have to sit at their dinner table and pretend I still don't know what they really think of me. 20 minutes to decide how to blow up the only family I've known for half my life. I pick up my phone and dial Santos's emergency line. Santos Legal, this is Jessica. Her voice is crisp, professional. I can hear traffic in the background. She's probably driving home from her real office at 6:47 p.m. on a Thursday, but she still answered. "Hi, I think my adoptive parents have been stealing my inheritance for 10 years. The words tumble out before I can stop them. I just turned 18 and I found documents and..." "Slow down," she says, but not unkindly. "What's your name?" "Riley Chin Morrison." "Well, Riley Chin. I want to drop the Morrison part." "Okay, Riley. I'm pulling over so I can focus on you. Can you give me the basics? When were you adopted and what kind of money are we talking about?" I explain everything while watching the clock tick toward dinner. She asks pointed questions about the documents, the account transfers, whether I have copies. When I mention the original inheritance amount, she lets out a low whistle. "Riley, if what you're telling me is accurate, this is a clear case of fiduciary abuse. Adoptive parents can access inheritance funds, but only with proper court approval and documentation for legitimate expenses. A family vacation to Europe doesn't qualify as medical treatment, no matter how they try to spin it. So I can get it back. We can certainly try. But I need to warn you, this is going to get ugly. These people raised you for 10 years. They're going to fight back, and they're going to use every emotional manipulation in the book. Are you prepared for that?" Through my bedroom door, I hear Margaret calling up the stairs. "Riley. Dinner." I have to go, I whisper into the phone. "Can I see you tomorrow?" "My office, 10 a.m. Bring everything you found. And Riley? Don't confront them yet. Don't let them know you know. We need to secure those documents and build our case first." I hang up and shove the papers back into the folder, my hands shaking. The smell of Margaret's pot roast drifts up from the kitchen, my favorite meal, she always claimed. Now I'm wondering if she just made it because it was cheap. Walking downstairs feels like descending into enemy territory. The family photos lining the hallway look different now. Dozens of pictures of Mason and Sophia at various achievements, vacation spots, celebrations. Maybe 5 pictures of me total, and I'm barely smiling in any of them. I always thought I was just camera shy. There she is. Richard booms from his seat at the head of the table. "Did you find those tax papers, kiddo?" "Kiddo." He's called me that for 10 years. Now it sounds patronizing. "Yeah, I found them." I slide into my usual seat between Mason and Sophia, facing Margaret across the table. "Wonderful. You know, I was thinking, now that you're 18, we should probably go over some financial planning with you. Help you understand how money works, budgeting, that sort of thing." Richard cuts into his pot roast, the knife scraping against his plate. "Can't have you blowing through your inheritance like some lottery winner." My fork freezes halfway to my mouth. The audacity is breathtaking. "That's so thoughtful of you, Dad," Sophia chimes in. She's 16, blonde like Margaret, with Richard's sharp chin. Riley's always been kind of spacey about money stuff. Mason nods through a mouthful of food. Remember when she thought that Honda cost 30 grand? So clueless. They're all smiling at me with such fond condescension. Like I'm their beloved pet who just learned a new trick. I smile back and take a bite of pot roast. Yeah, I say. I'd love to learn more about my money. The conversation continues through dinner like some twisted performance art piece. Margaret asks about my college applications with the same concerned mother tone she's used for years, while I mentally calculate how much of my money funded Mason's SAT prep courses. Richard launches into a lecture about compound interest that makes me want to scream, considering he's been compounding my inheritance right into his own accounts. You know, Riley, Margaret says, passing me seconds I don't want, we've been thinking it might be wise for you to stay local for college. Save money on room and board, keep the family together a little longer. Mason snorts. Didn't you get into Northwestern? That's like 60 grand a year. Which is exactly why staying local makes sense, Richard adds smoothly. Community college for 2 years, then transfer to state. Much more financially responsible. I nearly choke on my pot roast. Northwestern was my dream school, and I got in with a partial academic scholarship. The remaining tuition would be maybe $40,000 a year, a fraction of what they've already stolen from me. But they want me to go to community college to save my money. Actually, I say carefully, I've been thinking about Northwestern again. I could take out loans if needed. The silence that follows is deafening. Richard and Margaret exchange one of their loaded looks, the kind I used to think meant they were communicating as loving partners, but now recognize as strategic planning. Sweetie, Margaret's voice gets that gentle, condescending tone she uses when she thinks I'm being unreasonable. We've talked about this. College debt is so dangerous for young people. You don't want to burden yourself with loans when you have perfectly good options here. Besides, Sophia adds helpfully, Northwestern is super pretentious. You'd probably hate it there. My phone buzzes with a text. I glance down and see a message from an unknown number. This is Jessica Santos. Found some preliminary info on your case. Very promising. Don't do anything rash tonight. Who's texting you? Mason asks, leaning over to peek at my screen. I turn the phone face down. Just Kaylee, asking about homework. Richard's lawyer instincts must kick in because his eyes narrow slightly. You know, Riley, now that you're 18, you should be more careful about your personal information. There are a lot of scammers out there who target young people with inheritances. The irony is so thick I could cut it with his steak knife. What do you mean? I ask innocently. Oh, you know, he waves his hand dismissively, lawyers, financial advisors, people who might try to convince you that your family isn't looking out for your best interests. They prey on teenage rebellion, make you think everyone's trying to steal from you. Margaret nods gravely. We've seen it happen to other adopted children. They turn 18 and suddenly they think their parents are the enemy. It's heartbreaking. Especially after everything we've invested in you, Richard continues, and I swear he emphasizes the word invested. The private tutoring, the medical care, the stable home environment. Some kids forget how much their adoptive families have sacrificed. Sacrificed. With my money. I would never forget that, I say quietly. I know exactly how much you've invested in me. They all beam at me like I've just passed some crucial test. Margaret reaches over and squeezes my hand. That's our girl. Family first, right? Right, I echo, squeezing back while mentally calculating that her manicured nails probably cost more than my entire monthly allowance. After dinner, I volunteer to do dishes, partly to seem normal, partly to have a few minutes alone to process. As I'm loading the dishwasher, I hear Richard and Margaret talking in low voices in the living room. Think she suspects anything? Margaret's voice drifts into the kitchen. No, she's too trusting. Always has been. Besides, even if she figures it out eventually, what's she going to do? We're her family. I grip the plate in my hand so hard I'm surprised it doesn't shatter. The next morning, I wake up at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of hushed arguing downstairs. Through my bedroom floor, I can hear Richard's voice, sharp and agitated, and Margaret's higher-pitched responses. I creep to my door and crack it open. Told you to lock that filing cabinet, Margaret is hissing. What if she saw more than just tax papers? She didn't see anything. The folder was mislabeled, remember? And she's not exactly Sherlock Holmes. Richard, I'm serious. Yesterday at dinner she kept asking weird questions about her inheritance. And that look on her face when you mentioned financial planning. You're paranoid. Riley's been trained for 10 years to be grateful and compliant. She's not going to suddenly develop a backbone overnight. Trained. Like I'm their fucking dog. I slip back into bed and stare at the ceiling until my alarm goes off at 7 a.m. When I come down for breakfast, they're both all smiles again, but I catch Margaret studying my face like she's looking for cracks in a foundation. Morning, sweetheart, she chirps, sliding scrambled eggs onto my plate. Sleep well. Like a baby. I take a bite and smile. Thanks for making my favorite. The relief on her face is almost comical. Richard looks up from his newspaper and gives me one of his warm dad grins. Big plans today. It's Friday, after all. Actually, I was thinking of going into the city. Maybe check out some of those colleges we talked about. Just to look around, you know. The temperature in the room drops about 10 degrees. Alone. Margaret's voice climbs an octave. Honey, I don't think that's safe. The city can be so overwhelming. I could drive you, Richard offers quickly. Make a father-daughter day of it. That's sweet, but I need to learn to be independent, right? Besides, Kaylee might come with me. The lie slides out easily. I've gotten disturbingly good at lying to them lately. They exchange another one of their looks. Margaret sets down her coffee cup with a deliberate clink. Actually, I was hoping you could help me with some errands today. The dry cleaning needs picking up, and I wanted to reorganize the basement storage. You know how much I value your help with these things. Translation, we need to keep you busy and supervised. Sure, Mom. The city can wait. I finish my eggs and check my phone. 8:47 a.m. Jessica Santos's office is an hour away, and my appointment is at 10 a.m. I'm going to go get dressed. Upstairs, I move quickly. I photograph every document from Richard's folder with my phone, then carefully put everything back exactly as I found it. The original inheritance paperwork goes into my backpack along with my birth certificate and social security card. If I'm going to disappear for a few hours, I need to make it look natural. I text my friend Kaylee, "Can you cover for me today if anyone asks? Family emergency, we'll explain later." She responds immediately, "Of course. Everything okay? Will be soon, I hope." At 8:55, I call down the stairs, "Mom, I'm just running to grab coffee with Kaylee before we do errands. Be back in a couple hours." Wait, I thought. Margaret's voice follows me, but I'm already out the front door. The Honda starts on the second try, and I'm backing out of the driveway when I see Richard appear in the doorway, still in his bathrobe. He's holding his phone, probably trying to call me, but I've already turned it to silent. The 40-minute drive to Jessica Santos's office gives me time to rehearse what I'm going to say, but my hands are still shaking when I park outside the modest brick building. The sign reads, Santos and Associates, Family Law, Estate Planning, Adoption Services. At exactly 10 a.m., I'm sitting across from Jessica Santos in her small but professional office. She's younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp black hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Show me what you found," she says without preamble. I spread the photographed documents across her desk and watch her face grow increasingly grim as she reviews each one. She makes notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally asking for clarification or additional details. "Riley," she says finally, "this is worse than I thought yesterday. They haven't just been dipping into your inheritance, they've been systematically draining it while documenting fake expenses to cover their tracks. This European vacation. They billed it as family therapy retreat recommended by Dr. Patricia Hoffman for attachment disorder treatment. Is Dr. Hoffman even real?" Jessica types quickly on her computer. "Oh, she's real. And according to her website, she's never recommended a European vacation as therapy for anyone." She looks up at me. "Riley, I think your adoptive parents have been planning this fraud since before they adopted you. They specifically sought out a child with a substantial inheritance." The room spins slightly. I grip the arms of my chair. "You mean they never wanted me at all? Just my money? I'm sorry. I know that's hard to hear." My phone buzzes with the 7th call from Margaret in 20 minutes. Soon they'll probably call the police and report me missing. Actually, Jessica continues, pulling up something on her computer screen, "There's more. I ran a preliminary background check this morning on Richard Morrison's law practice. 3 other adoption cases in the past 15 years, all involving children with substantial inheritances, all with similar patterns of expense documentation." My stomach drops. "You mean I'm not the first?" "Definitely not. And here's the kicker, in 2 of those cases, the adopted children aged out at 18 and the remaining inheritance funds were transferred to educational trusts managed by Morrison's firm. The kids never saw a penny." I stare at her, processing this information. "Where are those kids now?" "That's what we need to find out. But Riley, this gives us significant leverage. This isn't just theft, it's a pattern of adoption fraud that could trigger federal investigations." My phone buzzes again. This time it's a text from Richard. "Riley, your mother is worried sick. Call immediately or we're contacting police." Jessica notices my expression. "They're escalating." I show her the message. She frowns and checks her watch, 10:43 a.m. "You've been gone less than 2 hours and they're already threatening police involvement. That's not normal parental concern, Riley. That's panic." She stands up and walks to her window, thinking. They know something's wrong. Maybe they noticed the documents were disturbed, or maybe they're just paranoid because you're 18 now and asking questions. What do I do? First, we secure your legal position. I'm filing emergency paperwork today to freeze all accounts connected to your inheritance and request a forensic audit. Second, you need to go home and act normal while we build the case. Can you do that? The thought of sitting at dinner tonight, pretending everything's fine while knowing they've systematically stolen my entire future, makes me want to throw up. But I nod. Good. But Riley, and this is crucial, don't sign anything. Don't agree to any financial planning meetings. Don't let them convince you to transfer accounts or consolidate funds. They're going to push hard now that you're 18, trying to lock in their control before you figure things out. She hands me her business card and a legal pad with notes. My cell phone is on there. Call me immediately if they try to pressure you into signing documents or if you feel unsafe. Unsafe. They're not violent or anything. Jessica's expression is serious. Financial predators get dangerous when their schemes are threatened. And make no mistake, that's what they are. They've stolen over $800,000 from you while playing loving parents. That level of manipulation requires a specific kind of sociopathy. The drive home feels like driving toward my own execution. I've been gone for 3 hours, and I can see Richard pacing in the front window as I pull into the driveway. Margaret bursts out of the front door before I even turn off the engine. "Riley." Thank God. She's either genuinely crying or putting on an Oscar-worthy performance. "We were so worried. Kaylee said she hadn't seen you, and your phone was going straight to voicemail." "Sorry, Mom. I went for a drive to think about college stuff and my phone died." I hold up my phone, which I've strategically let drain to 4% battery. I should have left a note. Richard appears behind her, and his expression is harder to read. His lawyer brain is definitely working, analyzing my story for holes. 3 hours is a long drive just to think, he says carefully. I went to Riverside Park, sat by the lake. You know how I process things. I push past them into the house, hoping I look appropriately sheepish rather than terrified. "I'm really sorry I worried you guys." Margaret follows me, still sniffling. "Honey, you can't just disappear like that. We're a family. We talk through problems together." The irony burns in my throat like acid, but I nod and hug her. Over her shoulder, I see Richard watching us with calculating eyes. "So," he says as Margaret releases me, "figure anything out about college during your thinking session? This is a test. I can feel it. Yeah, actually. I think you guys are right about staying local. Northwestern is probably too expensive anyway. The relief on both their faces is immediate and telling. Richard's shoulders relax, and Margaret beams at me like I've just announced I'm donating a kidney to charity. Oh sweetheart, I'm so glad you're being practical about this, Margaret gushes. We only want what's best for you. My phone, charging on the kitchen counter, buzzes with a text from Jessica Santos. Emergency hearing granted for Monday 9 a.m. Accounts will be frozen by end of business today. Stay strong. I have 4 days to keep pretending I don't know my entire life has been a lie. 4 days turns into 4 hours. Saturday morning, I'm pretending to read college brochures at the kitchen table when Richard gets a phone call that changes everything. I watch his face go from relaxed weekend dad to stone-cold attorney in about 30 seconds. What do you mean frozen? His voice drops to that dangerous whisper he uses when he's furious but trying to stay controlled. All of them. Margaret looks up from her crossword puzzle, frowning. Richard? What's wrong? He holds up one finger, pacing toward his office. No, I understand the legal mechanism. What I want to know is who initiated the freeze and on what grounds. My blood turns to ice water. It's only 9:47 a.m. on Saturday. Jessica said end of business Friday, but apparently the legal system moves faster than expected when there's evidence of fraud. Richard's voice carries from his office, getting progressively more agitated. A forensic audit? That's completely unnecessary. These are routine adoptive parent expenses, all properly documented. There's a long pause. I see. And when was this petition filed? I pretend to be fascinated by the community college brochure while my heart hammers against my ribs. Margaret has abandoned her crossword entirely and is straining to hear Richard's conversation. When he emerges from his office 10 minutes later, his face is a mask of controlled fury. Margaret and I both look at him expectantly. Just some complications with a client's estate, he says smoothly, but his eyes are scanning my face like he's searching for something. Nothing that can't be resolved. The rest of Saturday passes in a weird bubble of tension. Richard spends most of the day making phone calls behind closed doors. Margaret keeps finding reasons to check on me, bringing me snacks, asking about my weekend plans, suggesting we have a girls' day shopping. It would be sweet if I didn't know she was essentially babysitting a flight risk. By Sunday morning, they've clearly had strategy meetings. Riley, honey, Margaret says over breakfast, your father and I have been talking, and we think it's time we had a more serious conversation about your future finances. Here we go. Richard sets down his coffee and slides a manila folder across the table toward me. Now that you're 18, there are some decisions we need to make together about managing your inheritance responsibly. I open the folder with shaking hands. Inside are several legal documents with highlighted signature lines. My name is already typed in, just waiting for my John Hancock to make it official. What is this? Just some paperwork to ensure your inheritance is properly protected, Richard says in his most reassuring attorney voice. Basically, we're setting up a managed trust that will oversee your funds until you're 25. Much safer than leaving that kind of money in the hands of an 18-year-old. I scan the documents, trying to parse the legal language. What I can understand makes my stomach drop. This says you and Mom would be the trustees. Exactly. People who know you, who have your best interests at heart. Margaret reaches over and squeezes my hand. We've been managing these funds responsibly for 10 years. This just makes it official. But I can't access any of it until I'm 25. Well, for major expenses, of course. College tuition, medical bills, things like that. We'd never leave you without support. Richard's smile doesn't reach his eyes. But this prevents you from making impulsive decisions that could jeopardize your financial security. Impulsive decisions like hiring a lawyer to investigate where my money went. I need time to think about this, I say carefully. The temperature in the room plummets. Richard and Margaret exchange one of their loaded looks. Actually, sweetheart, there's a bit of a time crunch, Margaret says, her voice getting that edge it gets when she's trying to stay patient. These documents need to be filed by Monday to avoid some complicated tax implications. Monday. Tomorrow. I know it seems rushed, Richard adds, but trust me, the financial penalties for missing this deadline would be substantial. We're talking about potentially losing thousands of dollars. My thousands of dollars, I think, but don't say. What if I want to talk to someone else about this first? Maybe get a second opinion. The silence that follows is deafening. Richard's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly, and Margaret's grip on my hand becomes uncomfortably firm. Riley, Richard's voice has lost all pretense of warmth. Who exactly would you talk to? Some stranger who doesn't know you or your situation. Someone who might try to take advantage of your inexperience. Honey, Margaret jumps in, we're not strangers. We're your parents. We've protected you and provided for you since you were 8 years old. Why would you trust someone else over us? Because you've been stealing from me for 10 years, I want to scream. Instead, I look down at the papers again. It's just a big decision. Which is exactly why you need experienced guidance, Richard presses. Riley, I've been practicing estate law for 23 years. I know how to protect your interests. My phone buzzes with a text. Without thinking, I glance at it. Jessica Santos, don't sign anything. They know about the freeze. I flip the phone face down, but it's too late. Richard's eyes narrow. Who was that? Just Emma, asking about homework. The lie comes out automatically, but Richard's expression tells me he's not buying it. Emma? I thought you said Kaylee yesterday when you got a text at dinner. Shit. I force a laugh. Sorry, I meant Kaylee. Emma's in my history class. I always mix up their names. Margaret studying my face with the intensity of a detective. Sweetheart, you seem very anxious about these documents. Is there something specific you're worried about? This is it. The moment where I either commit to the lie completely or blow everything up. Jessica's voice echoes in my head, don't do anything rash. I guess I'm just scared about being an adult, I say finally. It's scary having this much money be my responsibility. The relief on their faces is immediate and profound. Margaret practically melts with maternal sympathy. Oh honey, that's completely normal. That's exactly why these protections exist. You don't have to carry this burden alone. Richard slides a pen across the table toward me. Sign these papers, Riley, and you can stop worrying. We'll handle everything, just like we always have. I pick up the pen, my hand trembling slightly. Richard and Margaret lean forward expectantly. You know what? I set the pen down. I think I need to sleep on it. Just one more night to wrap my head around everything. The silence stretches so long I can hear the kitchen clock ticking. Finally, Richard speaks, and his voice has an edge I've never heard before. Riley, I need you to understand something. Tomorrow morning, with or without your signature, certain legal processes are going to move forward. It would be much better for everyone if we handle this as a family. The threat hangs in the air between us, thinly veiled but unmistakable. Sign the papers, or they'll find another way to maintain control. What do you mean? I ask quietly. Margaret jumps in quickly. He just means the tax deadlines, honey. Nothing scary. But Richard's eyes tell a different story. He knows that I know, and the pretense is wearing dangerously thin. My phone buzzes again. This time, I don't look. That evening, I'm lying in bed staring at the ceiling when I hear footsteps in the hallway. It's 11:47 p.m., way past when everyone's usually asleep. The footsteps pause outside my door, and I hold my breath as the handle turns slowly. Riley. Margaret's voice is barely above a whisper. Are you awake, honey? I keep my breathing steady, eyes closed, pretending to sleep. After a moment, she retreats, but I hear her whispering to someone in the hallway. Richard's deeper voice responds, too quiet for me to make out words, but the tone is urgent. I wait 20 minutes before creeping to my door and cracking it open. The hallway is empty, but there's light coming from Richard's office downstairs. Moving as quietly as possible, I make my way to the top of the stairs. Can't wait until Monday, Richard is saying. She's getting suspicious. Did you see how she reacted to the trust documents? Maybe we're being paranoid, Margaret replies, but she doesn't sound convinced. She's always been compliant before. Before she turned 18 and got access to account information. Sarah, think about what happens if she starts digging deeper. Sarah. My blood runs cold. Margaret's real name is Margaret Sarah Morrison, but Richard only uses her middle name when he's really stressed. Like when Mason got arrested for underage drinking, or when Sophia crashed the BMW. The other kids never figured it out, Margaret says quietly. The other kids didn't have Riley's academic resources. Remember her SAT scores? She's not stupid, just naive. And naivety has an expiration date. I press myself against the wall, barely breathing. Other kids. Jessica was right, I'm not the first. So what do you suggest? Margaret's voice has that tight quality it gets when she's scared. We accelerate the timeline. I've been in contact with Judge Hamilton's clerk. We can get an emergency guardianship hearing as early as Tuesday if we can demonstrate she's mentally unstable. My stomach drops. Guardianship hearing? Richard, she's 18. You can't just. Mental health crisis, Sarah. Depression, anxiety, possible suicidal ideation following the stress of newfound financial responsibility. We have documentation of her erratic behavior, disappearing for hours yesterday, refusing to sign protective financial documents, social isolation. That's not. It doesn't matter what's true. It matters what we can prove. Dr. Patricia owes me several favors from the Hendricks case. She'll testify that Riley needs continued supervision for her own safety. Dr. Patricia Hoffman. The same therapist who supposedly recommended their European vacation as treatment for my attachment disorder. And if she fights it? With what resources? Her inheritance accounts are frozen pending the audit, which buys us time. Without money, she can't hire representation. Court-appointed attorneys for guardianship cases are overworked and underfunded. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, the trust documents will be filed and will have legal control until she's 25. 7 more years. 7 more years of them draining whatever's left of my inheritance while keeping me trapped under their control. What about the lawyer who initiated the freeze? Richard's laugh is cold. Jessica Santos. Ambulance chaser with a family law practice in a strip mall. She took Riley's case pro bono, which means she's fishing for a contingency fee. When Riley can't pay her retainer for extended litigation, Santos will drop her faster than a hot potato. I've heard enough. Moving as quietly as possible, I retreat to my bedroom and close the door. My hands are shaking as I grab my phone and scroll to Jessica's number. It goes straight to voicemail, but she calls back within 5 minutes. Riley. It's almost midnight. What's wrong? They're planning to have me declared mentally incompetent, I whisper. Emergency guardianship hearing. They want to prove I'm suicidal. The silence stretches for several seconds. Are you safe right now? I think so. They don't know I heard them. But Jessica, they mentioned other kids. Other adoptions. And they have a judge who'll help them, and a therapist who'll lie. Slow down. Tell me exactly what you heard. I relay the conversation as accurately as I can remember, including the names Richard mentioned. Jessica makes me repeat certain details twice. Riley, this changes everything. We're not just dealing with inheritance fraud anymore, this is conspiracy, potentially human trafficking for financial exploitation. But I need you to listen carefully. Can you get out of the house? What do you mean? I mean pack a bag and leave. Tonight. Do you have somewhere safe to go? My mind races. Kaylee's house. Her parents barely know me. My few other friends from school. Same problem. I don't think so. And if I disappear, won't that just prove I'm unstable? Not if we get ahead of it. I'm filing emergency paperwork first thing Monday morning, not just for the inheritance, but for protection from fraudulent guardianship proceedings. But Riley, if they're moving this fast, it means they're desperate. Desperate people do unpredictable things. Through my bedroom door, I hear footsteps on the stairs again. Someone's coming, I whisper. Call me the second you're alone again. And Riley? Don't let them isolate you tomorrow. Stay around other people, go to church with them, visit family friends, anything. Don't give them opportunities to create evidence of erratic behavior. I end the call and shove the phone under my pillow just as someone knocks softly on my door. Riley. Margaret's voice again. I brought you some warm milk. I know you're stressed about the financial stuff. I fake a sleepy voice. Come in, Mom. She enters carrying a mug, her face the picture of maternal concern. But now I notice things I missed before, how her eyes scan my room, looking for signs of what I might be hiding. How she lingers, studying my expression in the dim light from the hallway. Drink this, sweetheart. It'll help you sleep. She sets the mug on my nightstand and sits on the edge of my bed. I know today felt overwhelming, but I want you to remember that everything we do is because we love you. Love. The word tastes like poison now. I know, Mom. I'm sorry I got weird about the papers. You and Dad are just trying to help. That's right. We're family. She strokes my hair, the same way she has for 10 years, but now it feels like a predator grooming prey. And family takes care of each other. After she leaves, I stare at the mug of warm milk for a long time before pouring it down the bathroom sink. Monday morning arrives like a death sentence. I wake up at 5:23 a.m. to the sound of hushed phone conversations downstairs, Richard's voice carrying that clipped, urgent tone he uses for legal emergencies. My court hearing with Jessica is at 9 a.m., but clearly the Morrisons have their own legal agenda moving today. I check my phone to find 3 missed calls from Jessica, all from after midnight. Her text message makes my blood run cold. Emergency. They filed guardianship petition at 6 a.m. citing imminent danger to self. Hearing moved to 8:30 a.m. Do not go anywhere with them alone. 8:30 a.m. That's in 3 hours, and it's before my protective hearing at 9. Richard planned this perfectly, establish guardianship before I can reclaim my inheritance. I dress quickly in my most conservative outfit, navy blazer, khaki pants, minimal makeup. If I'm going to be psychoanalyzed by strangers today, I need to look as stable and mature as possible. My hands shake as I braid my hair back, but I force them steady. Downstairs, Margaret is making pancakes with manic cheerfulness while Richard paces by the kitchen window, still on his phone. When they see me, their expressions shift into identical masks of loving concern. Morning, sweetheart, Margaret chirps, sliding a plate toward me. I made your favorites, chocolate chip pancakes. I haven't eaten chocolate chip pancakes since I was 12. My actual favorite breakfast is yogurt with granola, which she'd know if she paid attention to anything about me that wasn't billable to my inheritance account. Thanks, Mom. I take a small bite and check the time. 7:45 a.m. Richard ends his call and joins us at the table, his face grave with artificial worry. Riley, we need to have a serious conversation. Your mother and I are concerned about your mental health. Here it comes. What do you mean? I keep my voice steady, curious rather than defensive. Honey, Margaret reaches across to squeeze my hand. Your behavior this weekend has been very troubling. The disappearing on Friday, the anxiety about normal financial planning, the paranoia about family decisions. I'm not paranoid. See? Richard interrupts, exchanging a meaningful look with Margaret. That defensive response is exactly what we're worried about. Riley, we think you're having a breakdown. I set down my fork carefully. I'm not having a breakdown. I'm just adjusting to being 18. Sweetheart, Margaret's voice gets the patronizing gentleness. Dr. Hoffman agrees that you're showing classic signs of acute stress reaction with possible dissociative episodes. The wandering off alone, the confusion about who's texting you, the inability to make basic decisions. Dr. Patricia Hoffman. The fake therapist who's about to testify that I need a European vacation. Except now she's apparently diagnosing me with mental illness based on conversations she's never had with me. When did I talk to Dr. Hoffman? Another loaded look between them. Richard leans forward with practiced compassion. Riley, that's part of what's concerning us. You had a session with Dr. Hoffman on Saturday afternoon. You don't remember? My heart stops. Saturday afternoon I was here, reading college brochures and pretending everything was normal. I never saw Dr. Hoffman on Saturday. Honey, Margaret's voice gets that scared, parental tremor. You were gone for 3 hours. You came back and said you'd been for a drive, but when we called Dr. Hoffman to check if you'd kept your appointment, she said you seemed very disoriented and confused. They're rewriting reality in real time. My disappearance on Friday to see Jessica Santos is being transformed into a Saturday visit to their pet psychiatrist, complete with manufactured symptoms and fake medical opinions. That's not, I stopped myself. Getting agitated will just support their narrative. Richard pulls out his phone and shows me a calendar entry. Riley, Dr. Hoffman, 2 p.m. Saturday, emergency consultation. The timestamp shows it was created Saturday at 11:47 a.m., right after he got the call about the frozen accounts. I understand this is frightening, he says gently. Memory gaps can be very scary. But the important thing is getting you help. My phone buzzes. Jessica Santos, are you somewhere safe? Don't go anywhere with them. I glance at the message, and both Richard and Margaret notice immediately. Who's texting you, honey? Margaret's voice has an edge now. Just school stuff. I flip the phone face down, but Richard's hand shoots out and grabs it. Riley, Dr. Hoffman specifically mentioned that isolation and secretive communication are warning signs we need to monitor. He's already swiping to unlock my phone. What's your passcode? I'd rather not. Riley. His voice drops to that cold attorney tone. Give me the passcode. Now. Margaret jumps in with artificial sweetness. Sweetheart, we're trying to help you. If you're talking to people who are encouraging paranoid thoughts, we need to know. I look between them, these people who raised me, fed me, tucked me in at night, helped with homework, attended school plays. For 10 years they've been my family, and I genuinely love them. The cognitive dissonance is devastating. 0-8-1-5, I whisper. My birthday, August 15th, Richard unlocks the phone and immediately navigates to my text messages. His face goes stone cold as he reads Jessica's messages. Riley, his voice is deadly quiet, who is Jessica Santos? The jig is up. No more pretending, no more lies. I straighten my shoulders and look him directly in the eye. She's my attorney. I hired her to investigate what you've done with my inheritance. Margaret gasps like I've slapped her. Riley, how could you, after everything we've done for you? Done to me, I correct. $800,000, Richard. I found the documents. His face cycles through surprise, anger, and calculation before settling on cold determination. He stands up and slides my phone into his pocket. Sarah, call Dr. Hoffman. Tell her we need an emergency intervention. He looks down at me with something that might be pity if I didn't know better. Riley, you're having a psychotic break. This paranoid fantasy about stolen money, hiring imaginary lawyers, it's exactly what Dr. Hoffman warned us about. She's not imaginary. Check the account freeze, check the court filings. What court filings? Richard's smile is sharp as a knife. Riley, there are no court filings. Jessica Santos doesn't exist. You've been having conversations with a delusion. The room spins. For a terrifying moment, I almost believe him. He's so calm, so certain, so completely convinced of his own narrative that reality starts to feel negotiable. But then I remember the specifics. The bank statements with exact dollar amounts. The documented transfers. The other adopted children he mentioned. What about the account freeze? You got a call about frozen accounts on Saturday. I got a call about a client's estate being audited by the IRS. You were in the room when I explained that. Richard's voice has that patient, talking to crazy people tone that makes me want to scream. Margaret's eyes are filled with genuine-looking tears. Oh, sweetheart, you took a completely unrelated phone conversation and built this whole conspiracy theory around it. Baby, that's not normal. I stand up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I'm not crazy. I'm not having a breakdown. You stole my money and now you're gaslighting me to cover it up. Riley, Margaret reaches for me, but I step away. Don't touch me. Either of you. The mask finally slips from Richard's face. His expression goes cold and calculating, the look of a predator whose prey has finally realized it's trapped. Sarah, he says quietly, never taking his eyes off me, make that call to Dr. Hoffman. Tell her we need immediate psychiatric hold paperwork. Richard, maybe we should. Make the call. His voice cuts through her hesitation like ice. I back toward the kitchen door, but Richard moves to block my path. For the first time since this started, I'm genuinely afraid of him physically. Sit down, Riley. We're going to wait for Dr. Hoffman together, as a family. Like hell we are. The words come out steadier than I feel. I'm 18 years old and you can't hold me here against my will. Richard's laugh is cold. Actually, we can. Under Pennsylvania law, if there's imminent danger of self-harm, family members can initiate a 72-hour psychiatric hold. Dr. Hoffman is prepared to sign the paperwork based on her Saturday evaluation. The evaluation that never happened. The evaluation you don't remember happening, Margaret corrects, her voice thick with fake maternal concern. Riley, honey, these memory gaps are getting worse. Yesterday you insisted you'd never met Dr. Hoffman, but we have her detailed notes from your session. My phone buzzes in Richard's pocket, probably Jessica trying to reach me. The irony isn't lost on me that my lifeline is literally in the hands of my captor. Can I at least see these supposed notes? Richard pulls out a manila folder I hadn't noticed before and slides it across the table. Inside are 3 pages of official-looking psychiatric evaluation forms, complete with letterhead, timestamps, and detailed observations about my presenting symptoms. Asterisk patient exhibits paranoid ideation regarding family finances. Claims adoptive parents have stolen inheritance, despite no evidence of financial impropriety. Shows signs of dissociation, became agitated when unable to recall attending scheduled appointment. Recommend immediate psychiatric hold for safety evaluation, asterisk. The signature at the bottom is Dr. Patricia Hoffman's, dated Saturday at 4:15 p.m. While I was home reading college brochures. This is forgery. But even as I say it, doubt creeps in. The forms look legitimate, the observations are specific, and the handwriting matches the signature. Either Dr. Hoffman is complicit in an elaborate fraud, or... No. I know what I experienced. I know what I found. Riley, Margaret's voice breaks through my spiraling thoughts, look at me, sweetheart. Really look at me. Do you honestly believe that your father and I, people who have loved and cared for you for 10 years, would steal from you? The question hits like a physical blow. Because looking at her now, seeing the genuine pain in her eyes, the tremor in her voice, part of me wants to believe this is all some terrible misunderstanding. That I really am sick, that the documents I found have some innocent explanation, that Jessica Santos really is taking advantage of a delusional teenager. I saw the bank statements, I whisper. What bank statements? Richard asks gently. Riley, when's the last time you actually looked at any official financial documents? Not printouts from the internet, not copies, but actual bank statements. I try to remember. The documents I found in his office were photocopies. The account information Jessica showed me was based on what I told her. Have I actually seen an original bank statement since I turned 18? The documents in your filing cabinet. You mean my client files? Riley, those weren't your documents. Those were case studies for other adoption situations I've handled professionally. You saw financial information for other families and somehow convinced yourself it was about you. The room tilts slightly. That's not. I remember specifically. What do you remember specifically? His voice is patient, therapeutic. Walk me through exactly what you think you saw. I close my eyes and try to reconstruct Friday morning. Going into Richard's office, finding the folder labeled Property Tax 2019, opening it to discover, what exactly? Bank statements with my name on them? Or just financial documents that I assumed were mine? The inheritance amount, I say desperately. $847,000. That's too specific to be a coincidence. Margaret and Richard exchange another look, but this one seems genuinely worried rather than conspiratorial. Sweetheart, Margaret says slowly, your inheritance was $47,000. Not $847,000. It paid for your private school tuition and medical expenses over the years. There's about 12,000 left in a college fund. 47,000. Not 847,000. Did I add a digit? Misread a decimal point. Create an extra zero out of wishful thinking. That's impossible. My father had life insurance, my mother had a family trust. Riley, your father sold insurance. He didn't have a massive policy. Your mother's family was middle class. The inheritance was substantial for a child, but it wasn't a fortune. Richard's voice is infinitely patient. I think you've been fantasizing about being secretly wealthy because it made you feel special, different from other foster kids. The psychological assessment suddenly makes horrible sense. A traumatized adoptee creating elaborate fantasies about hidden wealth, convinced that her loving family is secretly exploiting her. It's textbook. My phone buzzes again in Richard's pocket. He pulls it out and glances at the screen. It's another message from Jessica Santos, he says, showing the screen to Margaret. Should I read it out loud? Richard, don't humiliate her. Riley, I'm outside the courthouse. Judge Hamilton just confirmed there was never a guardianship petition filed. Your adoptive parents are lying. Get out now. He looks at me with something approaching pity. Riley, you're texting yourself. Jessica Santos is a personality you've created. Look at the phone number. He turns the screen toward me. The number shows up as, maybe, Jessica Santos, meaning it's not in my contacts, just a number I've assigned a name to in my head. And looking at it now, I realize it's not a standard phone number format. It's too short, missing digits. Honey, Margaret's voice is breaking, we need to get you help. Real help. I stare at the phone, my entire reality crumbling. Have I been having conversations with myself? Creating elaborate legal proceedings that don't exist? Living in a fantasy where I'm the victim of an inheritance scam instead of just, what? A normal adopted kid whose parents spent her college fund on her education and care. But something still feels wrong. The documents I saw, the specific details, the way Richard and Margaret have been acting this weekend. The other adopted children, I say suddenly. You mentioned other kids in similar situations. Richard frowns. Riley, I've never mentioned other adopted children in our family. We've only adopted you. No, I heard you talking to Margaret last night. You said the other kids never figured it out. Margaret and Richard stare at me with identical expressions of confused concern. Sweetheart, we were both asleep by 10:30 last night, Margaret says gently. Richard never had that conversation. The walls feel like they're closing in. Either I'm losing my mind, or I'm trapped in a house with two people who are systematically convincing me I'm losing my mind. I want to leave, I say quietly. I want to go for a walk and clear my head. I don't think that's safe right now, Richard says. Not until Dr. Hoffman can evaluate your current mental state. You can't keep me here. Riley. His voice gets that hard edge again. Yes, we can. The standoff lasts maybe 30 seconds before my phone, still in Richard's hand, starts ringing with an actual phone call. Not a text, not a notification, but a real incoming call with a contact photo and everything. Jessica Santos, attorney at law, flashes on the screen, complete with a professional headshot of a woman in her 30s with dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Richard stares at the phone like it's a live grenade. Margaret's face goes absolutely white. Answer it, I say quietly. Riley, you're having an episode, Margaret starts, but the phone keeps ringing, filling the kitchen with its shrill tone. If Jessica Santos doesn't exist, if I'm texting myself and having conversations with imaginary people, then that phone call shouldn't be happening. I take a step toward Richard. Answer it. He declines the call. Immediately, it starts ringing again. Richard, Margaret's voice is strained, maybe we should. Shut up, Sarah. The mask is completely off now. He declines the second call, but a voicemail notification pops up immediately. Riley, sit down. Now. Play the voicemail. You're not in a position to make demands. The kitchen door behind me opens, and Mason walks in wearing his weekend basketball gear, earbuds around his neck. He stops short when he sees the three of us in what's clearly a tense standoff. What's going on? He looks between his parents and me. Why does everyone look like someone died? Your sister is having a mental health crisis, Richard says smoothly, never taking his eyes off me. We're waiting for her doctor to arrive. Mason frowns. Riley has a doctor. Since when? Since she started having paranoid delusions about the family, Margaret explains, but her voice wavers. She thinks we've been stealing from her. Have you? Mason asks, and the directness of the question catches everyone off guard. Of course not. Margaret snaps. How could you even ask that? Mason shrugs. I don't know, it just seems weird that Riley would randomly go crazy about money stuff. She's never cared about money before. He looks at me. What kind of stealing? Mason, go to your room, Richard orders, but Mason doesn't move. My inheritance, I say quickly. $800,000 from my biological parents. Richard's been billing fake expenses to drain the account for 10 years. Whoa. Mason's eyebrows shoot up. Riley had $800,000. She had $47,000, Margaret corrects frantically. She's delusional, she's adding zeros that don't exist. Actually, Mason interrupts, and something in his tone makes everyone freeze. I saw some paperwork about Riley's money once. When I was like 14, I was snooping in Dad's office and found this file with bank statements. It definitely had way more zeros than 47,000. The silence that follows is deafening. Richard's face cycles through shock, rage, and calculation. Mason, you're misremembering, he starts. No, I'm not. I remember because I was pissed that Riley had all this money and I had to beg for $20 to go to movies. The account balance was like 800-something thousand. I asked Mom about it later and she told me never to mention it again. Margaret looks like she's about to faint. Mason, that's not, you don't understand what you saw. Oh my God. Mason stares at his parents with dawning horror. You actually did steal from her. That's why you're trying to convince her she's crazy. That's why you won't let her leave. My phone starts ringing again in Richard's hand. This time he answers it, his voice cold and professional. This is Richard Morrison. You need to stop harassing my mentally ill daughter. Even from across the kitchen, I can hear Jessica Santos's voice, sharp and clear. Mr. Morrison, I have a court order freezing all accounts connected to Riley Chen's inheritance, and I'm standing outside your house with a sheriff's deputy. You need to let Riley leave immediately, or you'll be charged with unlawful detention. Through the kitchen window, I see a police car pulling into our driveway. Richard's face goes gray. You have no legal authority. I have a copy of the original inheritance documentation, Mr. Morrison. $847,329.67. I also have records of every fraudulent expense you've billed to that account over the past decade. The front doorbell rings. The doorbell rings again, followed by heavy knocking. Through the front window, I can see a uniformed sheriff's deputy standing on our porch next to a woman in a navy blazer, Jessica Santos, looking exactly like her contact photo. Richard stands frozen, my phone still pressed to his ear. Margaret has gone completely pale, one hand gripping the kitchen counter like she's about to collapse. Mason stares at his parents with a mixture of shock and disgust. Dad, Mason says quietly, you need to let her go. Mason, you don't understand the complexities, Richard starts, but the knocking gets louder. Morrisons. This is Deputy Williams with the Chester County Sheriff's Department. We need to speak with Riley Chin regarding a court order. Margaret finally finds her voice. Richard, if there's really a police officer. There is no police officer. Richard snaps, but even as he says it, doubt creeps into his voice. He moves toward the front window and peers through the blinds. His shoulders sag. Fuck. I've never heard Richard swear in front of us kids before. The word hangs in the kitchen like a confession. Open the door, Richard, I say quietly. Unless you want them to break it down. He looks at me with something that might be respect if the circumstances were different. You clever little bitch. How did you manage this? Richard. Margaret gasps at his language, but he waves her off. No more pretending, Sarah. She outplayed us. He tosses my phone onto the counter. Congratulations, Riley. You win. The knocking intensifies. Mr. Morrison, we know you're in there. This is your final warning before we enter the premises. Richard walks toward the front door like a man heading to his execution. Margaret follows, wringing her hands. I grab my phone from the counter and check the screen. 17 missed calls from Jessica, dozens of text messages from the real number I apparently never saved properly in my contacts. Mason catches my arm as I head toward the front door. Riley, I'm sorry. I should have said something years ago about what I saw. I was a kid, and when Mom told me to forget about it, I figured it wasn't my business. It's okay. I squeeze his hand. You spoke up when it mattered. In the front hallway, Richard is opening the door to reveal Deputy Williams, a tall black woman with graying hair and stern eyes, and Jessica Santos, who looks smaller in person but radiates authority. Ms. Chin. Deputy Williams addresses me directly. I'm Deputy Williams. This is Attorney Santos. We're here regarding a court order protecting you from financial exploitation. Are you safe? I am now, I say, stepping around Richard to join them in the doorway. Jessica hands me a manila folder. Emergency protective order, signed by Judge Hamilton at 7:30 this morning. Your inheritance accounts are frozen, and we have a preliminary injunction preventing the Morrisons from accessing any funds pending a full forensic audit. Richard's face is stone. This is harassment. Riley is mentally ill, and you're taking advantage of a vulnerable teenager. Actually, Jessica pulls out another document. I spoke with Dr. Patricia Hoffman this morning. She's never met Riley, never conducted any evaluation, and never recommended psychiatric hold. She's also prepared to testify that someone has been forging her signature on medical documents. Margaret makes a small choking sound. That's impossible. We have her evaluation. You have a forged document created by your husband, Deputy Williams interrupts. Dr. Hoffman provided handwriting samples for comparison. It's not even a good forgery. The weight of 10 years suddenly lifts from my shoulders. I'm not crazy. I didn't imagine any of it. Richard and Margaret Morrison really did steal my inheritance while playing the role of loving parents. Riley, Richard's voice drops to that manipulative tone he's perfected over the years. You don't have to do this. We're family. We can work this out together. I look at him, this man who tucked me in at night while billing bedtime stories to my medical expenses account, who helped with homework while calculating how to justify charging school supplies to my education fund. No, Richard. We're not family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't gaslight each other. Family doesn't try to have each other committed to cover up fraud. Jessica steps forward. Riley, you're free to leave with us. Deputy Williams will escort you to collect any personal belongings you need. As I head upstairs to pack, I can hear Margaret crying in the living room, whether from genuine remorse or fear of prosecution, I can't tell anymore. Richard is on his phone with what sounds like his own attorney, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Mason appears in my doorway as I'm shoving clothes into a duffel bag. Where will you go? Jessica found me a temporary placement with a foster family who specializes in helping 18-year-olds transition to independence. Just until I can get my own apartment. Will I see you again? I pause, looking at this kid who I've thought of as my little brother for 10 years. He's not responsible for what his parents did, but he's part of a life that was built on lies. I don't know, Mason. Maybe someday. Downstairs, Sophia has arrived home from her Saturday morning dance class and is demanding to know why there's a police car in the driveway. Her voice carries up the stairs, shrill with confusion and indignation. 10 minutes later, I'm walking out the front door of the Morrison house for the last time, my entire life condensed into 2 bags. As Deputy Williams loads them into her patrol car, I turn back to see Richard, Margaret, Mason, and Sophia clustered in the doorway, watching me leave. Richard's face is cold, calculating. Margaret is still crying. Mason raises one hand in a small wave. Sophia just looks confused. Ready? Jessica asks gently. I take one last look at the 6-bedroom house in Westfield with its manicured lawn and its Range Rovers, this beautiful prison where I spent my childhood being grateful for crumbs from my own table. Yeah, I say. I'm ready. The temporary foster placement Jessica arranged turns out to be with the Hendersons, a quiet couple in their 50s who've been helping 18-year-olds age out of the system for the past decade. Their ranch house in Phoenixville is modest but warm, nothing like the Morrison mansion, and for the first time in years I sleep through the night without checking my door lock. Monday morning brings our first real court appearance. Jessica picks me up at 8 a.m. wearing a sharp gray suit, her expression grim but determined. In the car, she briefs me on what to expect. Judge Hamilton is fair but thorough. Richard's attorney will try to paint you as an unstable teenager making false accusations against loving parents. They'll lean heavily on the forged psychiatric evaluation and claim you're having delusions about the money. But you have proof now, right? The real bank records. Jessica's silence stretches too long. Riley, there's something I need to tell you. When we got the court order to access your inheritance account, we found something unexpected. My stomach drops. What kind of unexpected? The account exists, and the original deposit was indeed $847,000. But the withdrawals, they're not just fraudulent expenses. Richard has been systematically transferring money to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. If we can't prove those transfers were illegal, recovering the funds becomes much more complicated. How much is left? In the domestic account? About $18,000. But Riley, I found something else. The other adopted children Richard mentioned, I tracked down 2 of them. Marcus Chen, adopted in 2018 at age 16, and Sarah Martinez, adopted in 2019 at age 15. Both had substantial inheritances that were completely drained by age 18. Marcus Chen. The shared last name hits me like a physical blow. Chen. Is he? No relation that I can determine. But Riley, here's the thing, both Marcus and Sarah tried to pursue legal action when they aged out. Both cases were dismissed due to lack of evidence. And both kids ended up in psychiatric facilities after Richard had them declared mentally incompetent. The courthouse parking lot blurs as panic sets in. You mean he's done this before? Successfully. Which is why we have to be extremely careful today. Richard Morrison has perfected this system over multiple victims. He knows exactly how to manipulate the legal process. Inside the courthouse, I spot Richard immediately. He's wearing his most expensive suit, flanked by 2 attorneys who look like they charge more per hour than most people make in a month. When he sees me, his expression is coldly professional, no trace of the man who once drove me to the emergency room when I broke my arm, who taught me to parallel park, who cried at my high school graduation. Margaret sits behind him in the gallery, dabbing her eyes with tissues. She's dressed in a conservative blue dress that makes her look like a grieving mother. Which, I suppose, she is, grieving the loss of her cash cow. All rise for the Honorable Judge Hamilton. Judge Hamilton is a stern-looking woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that seem to take in everything at once. As she reviews the case files, I study Richard's lead attorney, a man named Douglas Crane who Jessica warned me about. Your Honor, Crane begins when called upon. This is a tragic case of a disturbed teenager making false accusations against the family who saved her from foster care. Ms. Chen has a documented history of paranoid delusions and has been under psychiatric care for. Objection, Jessica interrupts. There is no documented psychiatric history. The evaluation Mr. Crane is referencing has been proven to be forged. Judge Hamilton looks up from her papers. Mr. Crane, I have Dr. Hoffman's sworn affidavit stating she never evaluated the minor and that someone forged her signature. Do you have evidence to the contrary? Crane doesn't miss a beat. Your Honor, we believe Ms. Chen herself may have forged the document as part of her delusional episodes. We're requesting a competency evaluation before these proceedings continue. He's trying to delay, Jessica whispers to me. If they can get you committed for evaluation, it buys them time to move more assets offshore. Judge Hamilton studies both attorneys. This is highly unusual. Ms. Santos, what evidence do you have of financial impropriety? Jessica stands and opens her briefcase. Your Honor, we have bank records showing systematic withdrawal of funds from Ms. Chen's inheritance account, falsified expense reports, and evidence of offshore transfers to accounts controlled by Mr. Morrison. Alleged evidence, Crane corrects. Your Honor, my client has meticulously documented every expense related to Ms. Chen's care over the past decade. Private school tuition, medical expenses, therapeutic interventions, all legitimate costs of raising an adopted child with substantial trauma history. $800,000 in trauma therapy. Jessica's voice carries just enough sarcasm to make her point without sounding unprofessional. But Crane is ready for this too. Ms. Chen required extensive residential treatment programs, specialized educational support, and ongoing medical care for attachment disorders. The costs of helping severely traumatized children are substantial, Your Honor. Residential treatment programs? I've never been to residential treatment for anything. But as I listen to Crane describe my supposed psychiatric history, multiple hospitalizations, behavioral interventions, specialized schooling, I realize he's painting a picture of a completely different person. Your Honor, I say suddenly, and the courtroom goes quiet. May I speak? Judge Hamilton looks surprised. Ms. Chen, you're represented by counsel. I understand, Your Honor, but they're talking about medical treatments and hospitalizations that never happened. I've never been in residential treatment. I've never been hospitalized for psychiatric reasons. They're describing someone else's life. Crane jumps up. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of delusional thinking we're concerned about. Ms. Chen genuinely doesn't remember these treatments because of dissociative episodes. Then produce the medical records, Judge Hamilton says sharply. If Ms. Chen has this extensive psychiatric history, there should be documentation from multiple facilities. The silence stretches for nearly 30 seconds. Finally, Crane speaks. Your Honor, many of those records are sealed due to Ms. Chen's minor status at the time. Mr. Crane, I can unseal any records necessary for this proceeding. Do these treatment facilities exist or not? Richard whispers urgently in Crane's ear. From across the courtroom, I can see sweat beading on the lawyer's forehead. Your Honor, we may need time to locate some of the older records. You have 24 hours, Judge Hamilton says curtly. This court will reconvene tomorrow at 9 a.m. Ms. Santos, your client's assets remain frozen pending resolution. Mr. Crane, I want complete medical documentation for every treatment you've referenced, or I'm going to start questioning whether this entire psychiatric history is fabricated. As the courtroom empties, Richard approaches our table with his lawyer. Up close, his face is haggard, aged years in just the past few days. Riley, he says quietly, this doesn't have to destroy everyone. Think about Mason and Sophia. Think about what this will do to them. The manipulation is so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment I almost feel guilty. Then I remember, $800,000. 10 years of lies. Marcus Chen and Sarah Martinez, probably living in psychiatric facilities right now because they tried to reclaim their stolen inheritances. I am thinking about them, I say. I'm thinking about what kind of people their father really is. Richard's mask slips for just a moment, and I see something cold and predatory underneath. You have no idea what you've started, Riley. No idea at all. As he walks away, Jessica squeezes my shoulder. That sounded like a threat. It was, I say, watching Richard's retreating figure. But I'm not backing down. Tomorrow, we'll find out just how deep this rabbit hole really goes. The next morning brings news I wasn't expecting. Jessica calls at 6:47 a.m., her voice tight with urgency. Riley, we have a problem. Richard's legal team filed an emergency motion claiming you've been in contact with Marcus Chen and Sarah Martinez, and that you're all colluding to fabricate evidence against the Morrison family. I sit up in bed, instantly awake. That's impossible. I've never talked to Marcus or Sarah. I know that, but they're claiming phone records show contact between your number and 2 psychiatric facilities, Willowbrook Treatment Center and Pine Valley Recovery. They're saying you've been coaching other patients to make false accusations. The pieces click together with horrifying clarity. Jessica, I never called those places. But if Marcus and Sarah are in psychiatric facilities like you said, then Richard has access to their phone records and could easily manufacture evidence of contact. Jessica's voice is grim. Riley, this is worse than I thought. He's not just stealing money, he's systematically destroying these kids' credibility so they can never challenge him. 20 minutes later, Jessica picks me up for what she warns will be a brutal court session. In the car, she explains Richard's strategy, paint me as the ringleader of a conspiracy involving mentally ill former victims, all coached by an ambulance-chasing lawyer looking for a payday. The scary thing is, it's actually clever, Jessica admits. By grouping your case with Marcus and Sarah's, he makes all 3 of you look delusional. Who's going to believe that 3 different adopted kids all happen to have the same paranoid fantasy about stolen inheritances? At the courthouse, I'm shocked to see 2 additional people at Richard's table, a thin young man about 20 with hollow eyes and a girl maybe 19 with prematurely gray hair. Marcus Chen and Sarah Martinez. Richard's other victims, brought here to testify against me. Jesus, Jessica breathes. He actually brought them. Riley, don't react to whatever they say. These kids have been institutionalized and probably medicated for years. They might genuinely believe Richard's version of events by now. Judge Hamilton enters, and I can tell immediately that she's irritated. Mr. Crane, I asked for medical records documenting Ms. Chen's supposed psychiatric history. What I received instead was a motion alleging conspiracy. Explain. Crane stands confidently. Your Honor, yesterday's proceedings prompted us to investigate further. We discovered that Ms. Chen has been in contact with 2 other former Morrison family wards, both of whom have documented mental health issues and both of whom have made similar false accusations about financial impropriety. Is this true, Ms. Santos? Has your client been in contact with other parties? No, Your Honor. We can provide Ms. Chen's complete phone records showing no contact with any psychiatric facilities or their patients. Actually, Crane interrupts, we have evidence that Ms. Chen has been using burner phones and encrypted messaging apps to avoid detection. Your Honor, I'd like to call Marcus Chen to the stand. Marcus stands slowly, his movements indicating heavy medication. As he approaches the witness stand, I study his face. There's intelligence there, but it's buried under layers of pharmaceutical fog and institutional conditioning. Mr. Chen, Crane begins gently, can you tell the court about your relationship with the Morrison family? They adopted me when I was 16, Marcus says, his voice flat and rehearsed. I had behavioral problems. Anger issues. I made up stories about them stealing my money because I wanted attention. And have you been in contact with Riley Chen recently? Marcus glances toward our table, and for just a moment, his eyes clear. He looks directly at me, and I see recognition there, not of me personally, but of the situation. He knows exactly what's happening. Yes, he says quietly. She called me at Willowbrook. Told me to lie about the Morrisons. Said we could get rich if we all told the same story. The words hit like physical blows, but I force myself to remain calm. In the gallery behind Richard, I spot Margaret dabbing her eyes theatrically. Mason and Sophia sit beside her, both looking uncomfortable but present for the show. Jessica leans over and whispers, he's lying to protect himself. After years of institutionalization, he probably believes cooperation is his only chance of getting out. But as Marcus continues his testimony, describing elaborate phone conversations that never happen in conspiracy meetings and locations I've never visited, I realize something chilling. He's not just protecting himself. He's protecting Richard. After years of psychological manipulation, Marcus Chen genuinely believes that Richard Morrison is his savior and that ungrateful adopted children who make accusations are the real villains. Richard hasn't just stolen our money. He's stolen our ability to fight back by convincing us we're crazy for trying. When Sarah Martinez takes the stand after Marcus, I watch her hands shake as she's sworn in. She's younger than Marcus but looks older, like the institutional life has aged her prematurely. Her testimony follows the same script. Riley Chen contacted her, coached her to lie, promised her money if she helped fabricate evidence against the wonderful Morrison family who tried so hard to help troubled children. But then Crane makes a mistake. Ms. Martinez, can you describe the specific phone conversations you had with Riley Chen about coordinating your stories? Sarah's eyes dart to Richard, then to the judge, then back to Crane. She called me on October 15th. At 3:17 p.m. We talked for 43 minutes about how to make up bank records. October 15th was 8 days ago, before Jessica and I even knew Marcus and Sarah existed. But more importantly, I was in calculus class at 3:17 p.m. on October 15th, taking a midterm exam. 43 other students and Mrs. Rodriguez can verify that. I scribble a note and slide it to Jessica, October 15th, 3:17 p.m., taking calc midterm. Can prove it. Jessica's eyes widen as she reads. She immediately starts typing on her phone, probably contacting my school for records. But Crane isn't done. Ms. Martinez, did Riley Chin tell you specific details about how to forge bank documents? Yes. She said to use her inheritance amount, $847,000, and make up fake transfers. She said Mr. Morrison was evil and needed to be punished for helping us. The number hits me like a freight train. I've never spoken to Sarah Martinez in my life, but she just recited the exact amount of my inheritance, down to the dollar. A number I only learned 6 days ago when I found Richard's documents. There's only one way she could know that figure. Jessica sees it too. She's leaning forward, her pen moving frantically across her legal pad. Your Honor, Jessica says, standing abruptly. May I cross-examine this witness? Proceed, Ms. Santos. Jessica approaches Sarah with the careful precision of a surgeon. Ms. Martinez, you stated that Riley Chin told you her inheritance amount was $847,000. Is that correct? Yes. And this conversation took place on October 15th at 3:17 p.m. Yes. Ms. Martinez, how long have you been institutionalized at Pine Valley Recovery? Sarah blinks, confusion flickering across her face. 2 years, 4 months. So since June 2021? Yes. And during your time at Pine Valley, have you had access to legal documents, bank records, or financial information about other patients or former Morrison family wards? No, of course not. Jessica pulls out a document. Your Honor, this is Riley Chen's inheritance account summary, filed under seal with this court on October 12th, 3 days before Ms. Martinez claims Riley told her the amount. The specific figure of $847,000 appears nowhere in public records, was never disclosed in media coverage, and was only accessible to parties with direct legal standing in this case. The courtroom goes dead silent. Crane's face has gone pale, and Richard is whispering urgently to his other attorney. Ms. Martinez, Jessica continues, if you've been institutionalized for over 2 years with no access to legal documents, and if the specific inheritance amount was sealed by this court until 3 days ago, how exactly did you know that number? Sarah's mouth opens and closes like a fish. Her eyes dart desperately around the courtroom before landing on Richard, silently pleading for help. She must have, the phone call. Ms. Martinez, I'm going to ask you directly, did someone coach you on what to say in this courtroom today? Did someone tell you that specific dollar amount and instruct you to claim Riley Chin gave it to you? The silence stretches for nearly a full minute. Finally, Sarah's voice breaks. I just want to go home, she whispers. He said if I testified, I could leave Pine Valley. I just want to go home. Richard Morrison's carefully constructed house of cards is finally starting to collapse. The courtroom erupts in chaos. Judge Hamilton bangs her gavel repeatedly while Crane frantically objects to everything and nothing. Richard Morrison sits frozen at his table, watching his perfect system implode in real time. Order. Judge Hamilton's voice cuts through the noise like a blade. Ms. Martinez, I want to be very clear, are you testifying that someone instructed you to lie under oath in my courtroom? Sarah looks at Richard one more time, and I see the moment she finally breaks free from whatever psychological hold he's had on her for years. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Morrison visited me at Pine Valley last week. He told me exactly what to say. He gave me the dollar amounts, the dates, even the phone number I was supposed to claim Riley called from. Her voice gets stronger with each word. He promised if I testified against Riley, he'd petition for my release and pay for an apartment. If I didn't. She trails off. If you didn't, what, Ms. Martinez? He said I'd never leave Pine Valley. That my mental health evaluations would show I was still too unstable for release. Judge Hamilton turns to Marcus, who's still sitting in the witness area. Mr. Chen, do you have anything you'd like to add to your previous testimony? Marcus stares at Richard for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is clearer than it's been all day, like the pharmaceutical fog is finally lifting. Everything I said was a lie, Your Honor. Richard Morrison stole my inheritance too, $312,000 from my parents' life insurance. When I tried to hire a lawyer on my 18th birthday, he had me committed to Willowbrook for financial delusions and paranoid ideation. He looks directly at me. I'm sorry, Riley. I thought if I cooperated, maybe he'd let me out eventually. But seeing you fight back. I remember what courage looks like. Richard finally speaks, his voice deadly quiet. Your Honor, these are clearly coached responses from severely mentally ill. Mr. Morrison, Judge Hamilton interrupts, you're not representing yourself in this proceeding. Please remain silent. But the damage is done. Crane looks like he wants to crawl under his table. Even Richard's second attorney is putting distance between himself and his client, literally scooting his chair away. Judge Hamilton reviews her notes for several minutes while the courtroom waits in tense silence. Finally, she looks up. Based on the testimony I've heard today, I'm immediately ordering a criminal investigation into Richard Morrison's law practice for conspiracy, fraud, perjury, and financial exploitation of minors. Ms. Santos, your client's inheritance accounts will be unfrozen immediately, and I'm granting an emergency order requiring Mr. Morrison to provide complete documentation of all offshore transfers. She turns to Marcus and Sarah. Mr. Chen, Ms. Martinez, I'm ordering immediate psychiatric evaluations by court-appointed doctors, not affiliated with your current facilities. If those evaluations show you've been inappropriately institutionalized, there will be consequences. Richard finally stands, his composure completely shattered. Your Honor, this is a witch hunt. I've dedicated my career to helping troubled children. You've dedicated your career to stealing from orphans, Judge Hamilton snaps. Deputy Williams, please escort Mr. Morrison into custody pending criminal charges. As the handcuffs click around Richard's wrists, he looks at me with pure hatred. You have no idea what you've done, Riley. No idea who you've hurt. I stopped you from hurting anyone else, I reply quietly. The last thing I see as they lead him away is Margaret Morrison crying in the gallery, but now I recognize them as tears of fear, not grief. Mason catches my eye and nods once before helping his mother to her feet. Even Sophia, who spent her entire life being Richard's golden child, looks at me with something approaching respect. 3 months later, I'm sitting in my own apartment, a modest one-bedroom in Westchester, paid for with money from my recovered inheritance. Not the full $800,000, Richard managed to move about half of it offshore before we caught him, and lawyers' fees ate into the rest. But $637,000 is still more money than most people see in a lifetime. Marcus lives 2 blocks away now, working at a bookstore and taking community college classes. Sarah moved back to California to reconnect with extended family she hadn't seen since her adoption. We text occasionally, survivors checking on each other. Richard Morrison was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit fraud. Margaret received 5 years probation and had to surrender her nursing license. The Morrison house was sold to pay restitution to other victims, because Marcus, Sarah, and I weren't the only ones. The FBI found evidence of at least 7 other adoptions over 15 years, all targeting children with substantial inheritances. Mason started college at Penn State with loans and a part-time job. Sophia moved in with Margaret's sister in Ohio. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel guilty about destroying the only family I knew for 10 years. Then I remember, they were never my family. They were thieves who played dress-up as parents while robbing me blind. I do wish I never got adopted by them. But I'm no longer sorry I found out the truth. Some families are worth preserving, and some families need to burn to the ground so better things can grow from the ashes. I'm 18 years old, I have my own apartment, I'm starting Northwestern in the spring, and for the first time since I was 7 years old, I'm truly free. That's worth everything.